offensively, I'm going to start with Skylar Thompson just because it's so much more of a lightning rod topic with the fan base than Deuce Vaughn. But those two guys obviously are the big stories. I mean, I think you look back on it now and say Skylar Thompson in week one, hey, maybe he really had taken some steps forward, but his receiving core was quarantined until just a day or two before the game actually kicked off, and he was dealing with a new offensive line that had an injury that was thrown in there and didn't have Christian Duffy, who looked better than Katori Levis did on Saturday playing tackle. I mean, is it plausible to you that Skylar Thompson actually has taken a step forward and everybody was trying to craft their same narrative about Skylar too heavy based on what happened in the first game?
Definitely. I was a little – I mean, I guess I shouldn't be shocked because it's Twitter and everything, but just in retrospect, I'm surprised that people blamed him so much for the first loss and then credited him so severely for the second win, when to me he didn't play all that differently. If you go back and look at the Arkansas State game, I mean, he was this close to hooking up with some big plays with receivers. And, you know, he could certainly put the ball in better spots, but the receivers, as Curry Sexton told you, and I'm sure people could see on film, could do a little bit better job tracking it, bringing in the passes. He really wasn't that far away from throwing for 300, 350 yards and beating Arkansas State. And then really, I mean, against Oklahoma, the best thing I thought he did was just provide leadership and toughness, because there weren't any throws like he made that were amazing. I mean, credit him for putting that pass to Deuce Vaughn on the money, but it was Deuce who made a guy miss and ran for 70 yards, not him. Keon Mosey was wide open. Great job by the offensive line, giving him time to spot him. I mean, you or I could have made that throw. And then Mosey, turns it into a 78-yard gain. So I think, I mean, hey, he's a good quarterback. He's proven it. How many other people in Kansas State history have gone out and beaten 3 top 10 teams? Not many. He's done it twice to Oklahoma, once against Oklahoma State. Yeah, 0. So he's a better quarterback than people want to give him credit for when he plays poorly. He's maybe not quite as good a quarterback as he is when they win these huge games. I think it's probably time people just admit he's a pretty good player and leave it at that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Let me ask you this question, because we were recording Power Cat Game Day earlier this week. I asked this to Derek and Cole. If I gave you the choice between Skylar Thompson, Alan Bowman, or Charlie Brewer, taking everything into account for the rest of this year, so their injury history and everything into account, which one would you take?
Oh, man. Probably Thompson. Just because, he's proven that he can stay the course and play even if he is a little bit banged up. And I think especially if he can get somebody other than Sebastian Taylor to come out and give him some big plays in the wide receiver group, I think he can have a really good season.
Well, so it's interesting. I was reading your Q&A, and I know you brought up the wide receivers. Are you worried about, like, Malik Knowles, Josh Youngblood, a couple of guys that Chris Kleiman was asked about?
I'm starting to worry about Knowles. Something's off there. He just has not looked very good in the first 2 games. I mean, he didn't have a catch at all against OU. And, certainly Skylar deserves some blame for that. But he only had 1 catch. I think it was just 1 catch against Arkansas State, and that was the one where he left out of the stadium for it. So those two just for whatever reason don't seem to be on the same page right now. I think that kind of thing would be a little bit more explainable with Wyking Gill or Joshua Youngblood or Landry Weber, because they were the guys who were working back from being in quarantine or whatever and haven't had a whole bunch of time with Skylar. But it seemed like Knowles did have that time. So if there's anybody I'm worried about, it's him. I think the other guys will get it together and be more productive players moving forward. I mean, certainly Knowles can figure it out and have a big game week 3, but I'm starting to see some red flags there.
Kellis Robinett talking with me from the Kansas City Star and Wichita Eagle. All right, so for Deuce Vaughn, I mean, first of all, I have a bone to pick. So one of your readers, I don't know who it was, they stole my whole storyline this week, which is that Deuce is the best skill position player that K-State has had since Tyler Lockett in 2014. Okay, so I just want to lay claim to that I did not copy your mailbag. I had that out earlier this week.
I'm pretty sure he must listen. He must be a K-Man listener. He must love the show.
Yeah.
That was when I saw that, I was like, oh, hey, I'm prepped for this. I listened to John's show this week.
There you go. But it's a slam dunk, right? I mean, to me, it's really not particularly close. I understand that Alex Barnes was a first-team All Big 12 running back, but I just don't – he was productive, but not like a real lightning bolt talent like what Deuce Vaughn appears to be.
I think it's a little closer than maybe you give it credit for with Barnes. I mean, you remember how good he was as a freshman?
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Listen, I did a lot of whining and complaining about him not getting the ball.
People were ready to riot when he didn't play in the Texas Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, he was pretty good as a freshman too. He wasn't this electric, and I believe he was also a redshirt freshman when he did that. Right? Not a true. So I would lean more Tyler Lockett just because he's the last true freshman that actually did this. Because I think Deuce, I mean, through 2 games, Deuce has been better. But I remember watching Tyler as a true freshman, thinking, "My goodness, this is rarefied air here. You don't see this much at Kansas State." So he's got as much potential as anybody right now. And you could make a case for Byron Pringle, I suppose, just because he was really good as the senior. Barnes, like you said, led the Big 12 in rushing. I threw out some other names in the Q&A to name drop, but I don't know that anybody else is really even close.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, it really stood out to me that Matt Wells on the Big 12 teleconference is asked about K-State, and the first thing he's talking about is, well, they're trying to get number 22 the ball. I mean, he's number 1 on the scouting report right now.
It's amazing to me when you look back. He didn't, have like serious interest from many of those Texas schools. I know he's small, but
yeah, I know. I mean, he had an okay offer list. It was like Arkansas, Missouri, maybe Minnesota.
Yeah, Air Force, like Army were in there. I mean, yeah, he had like 5 or 6 D1 FBS offers, some P5 schools, but yeah, no Texas, no Baylor, no Tech. Kind of weird.
Yeah, well, it's a perfect K-State sort of a story here, but I didn't get the vibe even during fall camp when we were hearing a lot about him that they expected this much from him this fast. I mean, to what he's become already. I wonder now, 1, how they balance trying to keep him fresh with still getting him the ball, and then 2, how much things change now that he is going to be schemed against. Because if you're looking at K-State's offense, I mean, that's what you have to take away. I think it was Cole. It was either Cole Vanbeck or Chris Nelson. One of the two had some numbers about the passes that Skylar's thrown either to backs or receivers this year. The completion numbers, I believe, were below 50% to receivers and pretty pedestrian. But when he's throwing to the running backs, that's where all the yardage is being piled up right now. It's just all the backs between Keon Mosey and Deuce Vaughn that are racking up all that yardage. So what happens if he gets schemed away? Because if I'm Texas Tech, I would be saying, you guys can't really run the ball between the tackles. I'm going to do everything I can to take Deuce Vaughn out of the passing game, and you're going to need to beat me with Malik Knowles or Sebastian Taylor.
Right, and I think that's a great point. I was thinking about that this week and actually wrote about it. It made me think back to I remember that Zoom call we had earlier this year with Justin Hughes when somebody asked about Deuce Vaughn, and he said that basically after a few practices in preseason camp, he got so sick and tired of getting beat by him that him and Elijah Sullivan, every time they would just put him on the field, they make sure to say, "There's 22, there's 22."
That's right. I forgot about that.
Make sure you know where that guy is. That's going to be Tech this week, and I mean Matt Wells said it. He said it during the Big 12 teleconference. He said it during his own press conference. I will be very interested to see how they try to take him out of the game, because it's really not that hard for a defense if they say we want to take one guy away for them to do that. I think it can be done. But then by the flip side, I'm interested to see what Courtney Messingham has in store to say, all right, now that there is film out there on this guy and they are going to be keying on him, what do we do to get him open? I think they can find more creative ways to get him the ball as a receiver. That's where he's been the best. It'll be an interesting chess match this week because it's a lot harder to do it when you're a marked man than when you're not.
And when the motivation is different, which it is this week for K-State playing Texas Tech as it was last week playing Oklahoma. Kellis Robinett talking with me from the KC Star and Wichita Eagle. I mean, you made that point. I think it's a fair one. We haven't talked much about Texas Tech this week in any of the press conferences or just the media in general on the show. We haven't done a lot of Texas Tech talk. This is different than last year when you beat Oklahoma and you turn around and you have Kansas and then you have Les Miles smack talk and a ton of motivation going into that game against Kansas. Here you're playing, to be honest, one of the least interesting teams in the Big 12 and not a rival and just a so-so kind of a team. And you're busy, as Bill Snyder would say, reading the press clippings about how well you played last week against Oklahoma. So I think the motivation element here is storyline number one in the game. To me, how does K-State react? And then Texas Tech on the other side, they're trying to pick themselves off the map from just a total disaster of the last 3 minutes of that game.
Yeah, I mean, arguably, I think that's the question of the game right there. How does Kansas State respond from a huge win? How does Texas Tech respond from a huge loss? I wish it was a battle for first place. I wish Tech could have held on against Texas. It
Yeah.
would be cooler, but they didn't, and that adds a unique dimension to this game because it would have been a lot easier for Kansas State to be up for this game if all week Chris Kleiman could say, "This team just beat Texas. They're 2-0. This is for first place." I mean, I guess it still technically is for first. If they win, they'll be 2-0. Not even the mighty Iowa State Cyclones. That's a joke. Can pass them in the standings if they win. I mean, yeah, it's I don't know that it's a perfect trap game because the spread's only 2.5 points. But Kansas State has to take them seriously. You can't just look back and say they've won 8 of the last 9. Patrick Mahomes couldn't win here. They've won 4 in a row at home. You can't just bank on that stuff. I think Texas Tech will be motivated. They look better in game 2 than they did in game 1. So Kansas State has to be prepared. And I mean, hey, Texas Tech can move the ball just like they always have. And I guess kind of what another interesting thing about the game to me is just that because Kansas State hasn't been able to run the ball all that consistently, I don't know if they're going to be able to just play it at a slow pace like they would like. We might actually see kind of a shootout here. I don't know.
That's been the only thing the offense has, the ability to create big plays. They haven't been able to run between the tackles. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. And we've seen a lot of pretty close back and forth games between these teams, it seems like lately. And that was evidenced last year by that game in Lubbock. I mean, I feel like it is headed toward another one of those games because this seems like the exact same Texas Tech team that I've seen for 10 years. I mean, how far back you want to go with different variations in how high and low they are on both ends. It's a bad defense and a good offense.
Yeah, I miss Cliff Kingsbury though. I like.
Well, Matt Wells is more boring, certainly.
he's not. Yeah, he's more boring. Not nearly as GQ.
Yeah, Matt Wells did not star in The Notebook, so.
No, he did not. And I'm a little surprised their defense isn't better yet. I know it's just year 2, but I guess I'm surprised they're still trying to, go so fast on offense and everything. I thought he would have brought more balance there. And maybe that comes later on, but you're right. It just doesn't seem like all that different of a team. It's kind of weird.
All right, so what's your prediction here?
I'm still going with Kansas State. I mean, the thing we've just talked about, like, we haven't been talking about Texas Tech, right? Nobody outside the facility has been talking about Texas Tech, but I assume Kansas State still is. I assume they're taking them seriously. And, I mean, this game makes me nervous. I think it should make Kansas State fans nervous because I think it will be close. And like I just mentioned, I don't think Kansas State will be able to just say, we're going to grind this down and hold the ball for 40 minutes. I think it'll be a shootout, but I still think Kansas State wins. I think they win by maybe 44, 41, 38, 35, something like that. High 30s, low 40s. That's what I'm going with.